It's a ritual, almost, in Ireland. It's a sacred thing, a holy thing. Even if you're not interested in politics, you're looking at that count over 3 or 4 days, and you're switching on the TV to see the dejected expressions, the broken hearts of the politicians that have lost their seats. It's incredible blood sport. It's my favorite of the blood sports. Welcome to the Atlantic Current. I'm Vince Martin from Wall Street in Maine, here as always with Tull from the Irish Politics newsletter. Tull, do you know where that quote comes from?
Well, first of all, hello, listeners. Byelection Madness is almost over now at this stage. I'm not sure who that is, but he echoes my sentiments perfectly, Vincent.
I would hope so. It's you. That's you. That was you on episode 37 a couple months ago. You were explaining why Ireland rejected electronic voting machines, because you're a fine country. You love the drama, right? The build-up. The dejected expressions, as you put it, you prefer that intrigue over just brutal corporate-like efficiency. And you guys got some drama with a pair of by-elections this weekend, right?
Yes, we did, Vincent. All about the drama. And if this was the United States, I'd imagine the count would have been done and dusted, and everybody would have went home.
Yeah, it's not nearly as fun. It would be a couple hours. You know, they'd kind of make an announcement at 1 o'clock in the morning. The true weirdos would stay up for it. Most normal people would just kind of see it online in the morning and get on with their day. This is the first one I've ever watched closely because we're doing the pod now. And I will say, as an outsider, I get your point. I totally get your point. This really does kind of seem like a great spectator sport. I'm a little jealous.
Yes, it's great drama. Vincent, there was a European, I know you don't like rugby, but there was a European Cup rugby final on yesterday, and I barely looked at it because I was too busy watching the drama of the politics in Dublin Central. You know, that we have hurling matches on all weekend, Gaelic football matches on it, and I didn't even look at it because the blood draining from candidates' faces was more enjoyable spectacle than people punching each other over the head, to be perfect.
That's high praise coming from you. That is a very, very high bar to clear. But let's get to the details of the blood sport. We're going to start in Dublin Central because as we are recording this, it's about 4 o'clock West Cork time on Sunday. We're going to do a super fast turnaround here. You have some thoughts on where Galway West is going to go, but we're still going to let that play out a little bit. In Dublin Central, after talking about all that drama, not a lot of drama there. Is that fair to say?
Well, I predicted it first, and Richard echoed those predictions in the last podcast also.
Yeah, that was Richard Collum, who was on last week. Our first guest who really did an unbelievable job giving listeners a sense of how this was going to go.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Yeah, so myself and Richard both predicted it would be Daniel Ennis, number 1, and I said probably Janice Boyd in number 2. Ray McAdam fell short. The big story there is the anger, that anti-government vote actually increased from the last election in terms of there was a very strong anti-government sentiment there, and it would want to be because it's the home of the leader of the opposition, Mary Lou McDonald. But Daniel Ennis, at the end of the day, finished, when all the counting and tallying was done, I think it was nearly 4,000 votes ahead of Janice Boylan after all the transfers and after he'd been declared winner on the 9th count. This is bad news, as they predicted for Mary Lou McDonald. She's in trouble here now. I think in the long term, the medium to long term, short term, they'll batten down the hatches and say there's nothing to see here. We're united behind our party leader. But the reality of the situation, she couldn't get her own candidate over the line. I did also predict that the 21% that was stated in the polling, I thought that was overblown. I did genuinely think that was overblown. Yep, I think she came in at what? She came in at 17%? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I got 17.8% in my notes. Yep.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's material.
It was a good day for the Social Democrats. They've come and they've eaten Sinn Féin's lunch, Vincent. They've snatched it, they snatched it off the table right in front of their eyes, and Sinn Féin have been unable to do anything about it. And there was a quiet kind of dignity in the Social Democrats winning that. And I think that people are turned off by Sinn Féin's shouting, wailing like banshees across the Dáil chamber at the government parties. And the Social Democrats are doing things more polite, more mannerly, almost a kind of more competent manner, right. I'd almost say, to Sinn Féin. There's one more observation about that count yesterday. So we can't talk about Dublin Central without talking about Gerard Hutch now, can we?
No, we cannot. Even Richard was saying he got a lot of attention from the media because I think his word was spice, right? It added some spice to the coverage of the election to have him involved and talk about what he was going to do.
Yes, when you have the Financial Times and Politico and Bloomberg all doing articles on this Gerard Hutch fellow, the alleged gangland criminal who's ever only done time in jail once when he was like 17 or 18 for
how about that? I didn't know
something incredibly minor,
Yeah, you can see why. It's a classic story. For some reason, I can't tell if this is complimentary or insulting to your country. It seems more interesting because it's in Ireland.
Yes, it's like something out of one of those that John B. Keane plays, the gangster criminal taking
there you go. Yeah.
The Irish political system, He's been rehabilitated by politics, which very few people get.
I think part of it, though, in the U.S. is that there is some echoes of the Irish American experience, right? There are those stories in New York City in the late 19th century, right? Guy starts.
How many
There actually is a famous story we're going to talk about at some point in the next month or two. But a guy starts with the Dead Rabbits gang and winds up being a very respected and successful politician, that kind of thing too.
But circling back to the Gerard Hutch and his vote, okay, so you got a very respectable 11% of the vote. That would probably be good enough in a general election when you have 3 or 4 seats up for grab. That'd be good enough to get you elected, probably. Now, Malachy Steenson, who would be the anti-immigrant candidate, and Gerard Hutch would have been quite anti-immigrant, combined together, they had 20% of the vote, okay? So there's a very good chance if one of those two people had not run, there was a very strong, very, very strong chance of one of them being in the mix for that race.
I think Ennis was right at 20% on the first preference, right?
Yes, he was 19.72%.
Yes, so that shows your point. Yep.
Again, there's a very strong anti-government vote there. Poor Fianna Fáil, Vincent. Poor Fianna Fáil. So Richard spoke about you have to reach a certain threshold to get your deposit back. They didn't even manage that, They managed 4.2% of the vote to get, and I think you needed 5% or something like that to get your deposit back.
Yeah, you had said the first preview that we did, you had said if they didn't get 5% here, it would be a disaster. Richard coincidentally used the exact same word if they didn't get to where he thought they were going to go. And so I guess that word applies now, right? I mean, this is a disaster, right?
It is a disaster. And may I point out, Tull was right again. I did say 5%.
That's true. Yeah.
I was only out by 0.75 of a percentage.
Well, you didn't. You said you didn't think they would even get to 5%. So
did I? Right.
Yeah, that's how you put it. So yeah, you were dead on that one.
And it was a very lackluster campaign. I was looking at his attempts at social media, and it was kind of watching your drunk old uncle at a wedding make a holy show of himself. There was something quite undignified about the way he was faffing about the place on social media, I felt. And when you have a field there of very kind of youngish, energetic candidates, your Janet Horner from the Greens, Daniel Ennis, Ray McAdam, the People Before Profit guy, Ruth O'Dea, they were kind of youngish, they're middle-aged people, but youngish enough candidates compared to him. I think it was kind of...
Or any American politician.
Or any American politician. Yeah, he was almost kind of pale and stale almost. I mean, there's nothing Fianna Fáil can do there. I seen people moaning and giving out on social media that they need to change their leader. Sure, they could, De Valera could come back and they still wouldn't make a bloody difference, They could clone De Valera, have him reconstituted, have him re-elected, and there's no way Fianna Fáil will ever get back to their heady, glorious days of, taking 40% of the electorate.
Why is that?
I think for many years they were all things to all men, Vincent. And the era of being all things to all men is over. As you can see, that the electorate is quite splintered, it's quite fractured. And I think you have to carve out a niche for yourself, and you have to be very clear about what you stand for and what you don't stand for anymore. The catch-all being all things to all men is over. I think you need to redefine who you are exactly and try and hold on to that 15 to 20%. Same goes for Social Democrats, Sinn Féin, all the political parties out there. The era of being all things to all men is truly over. And I think you see that in the United States as well. For a long time, the Democrats and Republicans were trying to be all things to all men, and you can see the parties splintering and fracturing within themselves also.
That sounds much more like a Democratic thing, because what the Republicans have managed to do is coalesce around a cult of personality. But yeah, we've talked about U.S. Democrats historically having an oddly broad reach where they had union workers in Rust Belt cities in the Midwest and far left, environmentally conscious Greens or something close in California, all under one tent. Trump has allowed the GOP to kind of create a consensus around one person and a stronger message. The Democrats just don't have that message. They have not had that message. I think probably at least since Obama's first term is the last time they really had any kind of coherent message or brand. If you just kind of ask an average person, what do U.S. Democrats stand for, whether they're for or against them, they're going to give you 20 different answers. There's not a coherent answer in the way that, for better or for worse, there is a pretty clear coherent answer about the Republican Party right now.
Yes, and for many years, Fianna Fáil were those. Fine Gael had always identified itself as a very kind of centre-right Christian party, and they've evolved into quite a liberal political party now at the moment. But Fianna Fáil were the party of, the working class farmer, the working class man in the city, the aspirational class, the builder class, the professional class. They were a big catch-all tent for everybody. But that's over now. Those days are over. It doesn't matter who Fianna Fáil replace as their leader. Those days are not coming back at all, because society's so splintered and fractured. The haves, the have-nots, the Gen Zs, the Gen Xs, whatever their generation they call themselves these days, they want different things. I fear for Fianna Fáil is that once they get rid of Micheál Martin, you're going to see a succession of failed leaderships, similar to the Tories in the UK after Brexit or before Brexit. Similar to what's going on in the Labour Party at the moment, they're kind of tearing themselves apart. There's quite strong analogies there with them also.
Yeah, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken right?
No, exactly, my friend. I'm robbing that quote. I've never heard that quote before.
That is one of my favorites. I've been using that since I was about 8 years old. I'm not exaggerating.
Now, Vincent, circling back.
Moving west.
Yes, moving west.
Even I know that.
Moving west, yes, out to Galway west, the kind of place where the men are men and sheep are nervous up in Connemara. My predictions against all the grains came, I was laughed at, Vincent. People mocked me on the street.
Who would do such a thing? We did an entire episode titled Tull was right. You would think people would know better at this point.
People were mocking me, saying Sean Kyne's not going to win that. And I kind of went, I know I have some what you call inside baseball knowledge of what's going on there.
Evidently,
in terms of party strength and things like that. And the reason why Sean was underestimated so much was because he's a politician of 20 years. You don't get to last in national politics for 20 years without having some cunning,
yeah, for sure,
some skills in the back pocket, an ace in the hole, so to speak. Second of all, that membership, the Fine Gael membership in Galway, is probably the strongest in the country. They're a very, very well organised Fine Gael constituency over there. They're really on top of their stuff in all aspects of the party organisation, is what I'm told.
Richard made that point in these kind of elections. Party organisation and execution really matters, right? Because they are lower turnout. Getting out your vote is a huge, huge edge. So.
The Fine Gael organisation in Galway is quite strong. They pulled out all the stops. They've got the bounce of a ball in a few instances. So, as we're recording this, 3 candidates remain in the field following the conclusion of the 9th count in Galway West. Okay, Sean Kyne received 2,500 votes or thereabouts to catch up with Noel Thomas. Noel Thomas had the lead of nearly 2,000 votes at one stage, but the young Fianna Fáil fellow has transferred quite heavily to Fine Gael Sean Kyne, as was expected, about 2,500 votes worth. So, I suspect very strongly the Labour candidate who's going to be eliminated next, Helen Ogbu, when she's eliminated, her transfers come out. It looks like they will favour Sean Kyne, and that'll be at the end of it to Noel Thomas. So, as we've always said, transfers are king in Irish elections, and this has turned out to be a prime example of that. If this was a first past the post race, it would have been all over already, but because the transfers are coming through, Sean Kyne looks like he's going to take it over Noel Thomas.
Yeah, that was a point you made from the jump. That Kyne was going to have a huge edge in transfers, and I think Richard said something like if it got to the 7th count, that was really bad news for Thomas. And like you said, we're at the 9th count.
I made a mistake there, Vincent. It was the Social Democrats candidate. Do you want to pronounce it? Do you want to try and pronounce it for our listeners?
Is that Mita?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No. I got her first name right. I'll come back next month when I get her last name.
Yes, Mita Ní Fhuinneach. of the Social Democrats is being excluded as we speak. I got ahead of myself. I said the Labour candidate was going to be excluded. But Mead is going to be excluded now, and her 6,000 ballots are going to be divvied up. And I don't imagine, God forbid I say this, I might get cancelled, but the very woke Social Democrat is not transferring to the anti-immigrant
understood.
Noel Thomas. It's not happening. I don't see that happening. And if it does happen, it'd be just another weird, very weird thing to put down to in Irish politics. But you'd have to fancy Sean Kine to catch those 300, take those 300 votes easily and overtake Noel Thomas.
Okay. Yeah, and if that doesn't happen, we'll delete the episode and pretend none of this ever happened.
Yes, of course. My spies in Galway are telling me that privately that the Independent Ireland candidate Noel Thomas he's all but conceded, and he looks like he has a mouthful of wasps as well. Everybody, well, I was first out of the traps, as we know, was predicting Sean Kine and Noel Thomas to be duking out for 1 and 2, and that's what it's turned out. And it's a big boost for Simon Harris and Fine Gael, because over the 2 elections, it looks like they're the political party that got the most votes.
Right.
That's off the top of my head. But
it certainly wasn't Fianna Fáil.
No. And I did predict the Fianna Fáil candidate would be 8%. I think he got 8.9%.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the lotto. I have to start doing the lotto, Vincent, I think, at this stage.
Yeah. We needed to go to Polymarket after we recorded these previews. We missed out.
Well, I did take the Polymarket.
There you go.
And let's just say I'm up about 750% last time.
There you go. Good work. That's all right.
So the wife needs shoes. Yes, bit of fun. I'm not sure the legalities of that, so I'm just looking over my shoulder to see if I'll be contacted by the Electoral Commission on whether I should be gambling on this or not. So a good result for the Social Democrats all around, I think. Did you have any outside observations looking in from across the pond, Vincent?
Not a ton, just because my knowledge of all this is basically came from listening to you and Richard. I think the one question I had, and I guess Thomas is principally the avatar of this, do you draw any conclusions about the fuel protests earlier this year, about their permanence in Irish politics, how much they matter? Did the fuel protests, for instance, drive Thomas to do better than he might have done otherwise, or does this kind of suggest that they're already forgotten, that they're not meaningfully changing the status quo on the ground in Ireland?
I think their impact is minimal, to be perfectly honest. I think they were important in the run-up and the lead-up. If they'd happened, say, last weekend or the weekend before that, it might have changed things significantly.
Just closer to the election, more momentum, all that kind of stuff. That makes sense.
So the next election is in 2029, and too many things can happen between now and 2029 for the general election, and it has to be seen. But Independent Ireland will be in the mix in a lot of rural constituencies. There's no doubt about that. There's absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever. Anywhere outside the Pale, outside Dublin, or the large urban areas in Galway and Cork City, they'll be in the mix for a lot of those rural seats, I think. And they'll do well. They will be in the mix in rural areas, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and we talked about Fianna Fáil. We have joked a few times about how Micheál Martin keeps popping up on this podcast. The heave might be on the way, the knives might be out. There was a tweet from Councillor Michael Sheehan, now an independent councillor in County Wexford, was a member of Fianna Fáil for 25 years. I just kind of happened to see this. I thought it was quite interesting. Here's the quote. Fianna Fáil is in total wipeout territory. The message and the messengers and the leader have lost the room. Absolute betrayal of a century's achievements. Micheál Martin needs to go. Clean out HQ. It's over. Which I was like, holy, there's no real room for nuance in there. And what also kind of jumps out is that he sent that tweet out on Saturday morning. Really shows you, like, not only was it a disaster for Fianna Fáil, as you're saying, it was very obvious very quickly it was a disaster, right?
First, I don't think anybody predicted anything other than a disaster for Fianna Fáil, to be perfectly honest. And that councillor...
Is this still a little worse than thought, or is this about kind of where the consensus was?
Well, you know my favourite saying when it comes to politics and numbers. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie, Vincent. And I did predict how bad they would do. And I don't know, were they taking some illegal substances in Fianna Fáil HQ that they thought they might do better? But no. Now, it should be pointed out that Councillor Michael Sheehan, I think he's had a long-term animus against Micheál Martin, Fianna Fáil HQ in general.
There was a couple of replies that might reference the fact that he's not an unbiased observer. He might have enjoyed the victory lap, but that in and of itself is telling. When your enemies are out there taking victory laps as soon as they can, perhaps your political standing is not quite where you would like it to be.
No, and there's another theory out there as well, is that Micheál Martin's actually keeping Fianna Fáil's numbers artificially high. The fact that if he goes in the morning, there might be not a whole lot of reason to vote for Fianna Fáil in the first place. People should be aware of what's going on there. It's very easy to come out against your party leader when the numbers are down. But I suspect very strong. He consistently rates as one of our most popular leaders in the country for the last 15 years, constantly. You know, sometimes he's higher ratings than Mary Lou MacDonald. And, you know, she's the leader of the opposition. It should be a slam dunk for her to be the most popular leader of the opposition. But I think the Fianna Fáil, you know, Micheál Martin is 12 months now. And I think it's the long goodbye from here on.
Right.
After the EU presidency is up, he's gone, I think.
His personal popularity doesn't seem to be carrying down the ticket, though. And there also have been some issues with how the party is You pointed out to me this week that one of the candidates sent out a bunch of leaflets with the wrong day of the election on it. Is that right?
Yes. Poor John Stevens. They had a load of election literature go out on Wednesday, I think it was, telling people that the election was on Thursday rather than And I tell you why that kind of bothered me on behalf of Fianna Fáil is that when those tiny little mistakes, those tiny little slips, that shouldn't have been let out the door at all. Like, was there nobody proofreading it? Somebody looked over that leaflet and let it out the front door. And I mean, it wasn't even in small letters. It was like on Thursday, 22nd of May, vote John Stevens number 1. You know, of course, somebody texted Tull with the picture straight away. So I'm wondering, has the organisation in Dublin Central collapsed completely, that there's no serious people running operations there? Or is it a wider malaise within the Fianna Fáil party that they're not covering the bases like this, you know?
Well, unsurprisingly, Martin thinks it's the former. He actually told the Irish Times this weekend that there have been, quote, structural issues in Dublin Central. And this is a quote jumped out to me as an outsider. The issues, they didn't start today. In fact, it goes back 20 years now. It's just like, I mean, how many of those years has he been the head of the party? I mean, a good number of them, right?
Yeah, I think, what is it, 15 years now or something like that?
Yeah, it's like a CEO saying, oh, yeah, you know, that business has been terrible. It's been awful for 15 years. Well, you should probably have done something about that at some point.
So the things with Dublin Central was Bertie Ahern, former Taoiseach's constituency. And for a long time, Dublin Central was a Fianna Fáil stronghold where they'd, you know, easily take 40% of the vote. And now they're only taking 4% of the vote. Yeah,
it's a long way down.
That's a long, long way. That's a long way to go, isn't it? And, you know, you had Bertie Ahern on the doorsteps, the former leader. And he's still toxic. I don't think he should be wheeled out for anything at all. He should be put in a mausoleum somewhere and, you know, as a monument to Ireland's Celtic Tiger excess. He did the campaign no help at all whatsoever. You know, he was even caught on saying things about Somalians, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we talked about that. Got videotaped on the doorstep. Yeah. Yeah, with some questionable, some unwoke commentary, shall we say.
Oh. Yes. Do you have any interesting leaflet stories from the United States, Vincent?
Yeah, you told me that because we've had a couple goofy stories with that. One of the more interesting ones happened in the last U.S. House of Representatives election in 2024. It was a race in Michigan, and the Republican candidate put an ad in a Black-owned, Black-targeted newspaper in Lansing, Michigan, that had the date wrong. It had the date of Election Day as November 7th instead of the correct November 6th. And his opponents called for an investigation, arguing that he was basically putting that in front of Black voters who, in that kind of race, literally more than 90% of them were going to vote for his opponent. So they argued that that was like a voter suppression thing. Of course, their campaign's like, no, it was just a typo. It was a proofing error. But his opponents did not believe him. And there's a fun article we'll link to in our Substack. This was back in 2018. There was something weird going on social media, some kind of apparent disinformation campaign where people were tweeting and posting on Facebook the wrong dates or things like that. And the one that was really funny is somebody tweeted, it got a couple hundred likes. I don't think this whole thing had a ton of traction, but this one evidently people viewed. And Election day was November 6th. So it said there's been a change in national polling policy. Democrats and independents now vote on November 6th and Republicans vote on November 7th. And I always see things like that. If I had the time, I would go to polling places like on the wrong day and just see who showed up. I would really be fascinated to just see the looks on some people's faces as they try to figure out why the doors were locked.
Unfortunately, I don't think any such conspiracy revolves around John Stevens. I think it's just basic incompetence in this case, rather than
it wasn't an inside job by a disgruntled Fianna Fáil IT supervisor or something.
No, there's nothing nefarious here. It's just bad politics, essentially, bad organisation. Fire the director of elections, have his head put in a chopping block and don't let him anywhere near elections ever again, I suppose. So it's been really bad. I think the damage to Sinn Féin is actually worse than the damage to Micheál Martin, though, to Mary Lou MacDonald. I genuinely think that, because her electoral record is incredibly patchy. She's no consistency there. She's a very good campaigner come general election. She is a very, very good campaigner. And I also think there's an element of, if they get rid of Mary Lou MacDonald, what's going to happen after that? I struggle to see Pierce Doherty, Shouty McShoutface, I call him. And he's always shouting. I don't know anybody puts up with him, listen to him in the door, but he's always shouting. And people are looking at that and they're kind of tired of the angry politics. In Ireland, we don't really kind of do the angry politics well. We don't warm to it. And I'm not sure swapping out Mary Lou MacDonald for Pierce Doherty is going to work either. But also, you judge your party leader by results. And, it has to be said, Micheál Martin increased Fianna Fáil's vote and TDs at the last general election. And so did Mary Lou. But, she's been party leader in opposition now for a long, long time, over 15 years, I think, as well. I suppose people are tired of looking at her.
But she's been the leader over a 15-year period where, as you've said a bunch of times, the government parties have been bleeding support for most of that period, right? So, that in and of itself is a little bit more of an indictment of her. It seems from the outside like they had an opportunity to actually really make some inroads, join the government, take a lead, however, I'm an American, I'm struggling to say something that isn't stupid here, but I'm saying from the outside, it seems like the external environment was set up for them to have more success than they've had under her. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes, all the political mood music was there for Sinn Féin to do much better, but they haven't. Their candidate terrible in Galway West. He didn't have spoke about his lack of Irish, and lack of Gaeilge.
Yeah.
They made a lot of mistakes there. He wasn't a very confident character, I thought, as a candidate either. He didn't strike me as particularly charismatic. I think Mary Lou has a lot more to fear than Micheál Martin. I just, you can't have an electoral record like that that's so patchy. And she couldn't get her candidate over the line in her own backyard. As I said before, it was her by-election to lose, essentially, and she did. She lost it spectacularly, or she lost it bigly, as Donald Trump would say.
Yeah, that's fair. And there's also the fact that it seems like the expectations there were higher. There were some hopes that Sinn Féin could actually put up a pretty credible showing, and it doesn't seem like in either constituency they really mattered all that much.
No, they didn't. And we're at danger of reading too much into these by-elections.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Do they mean anything more? I can tell you for this, at the next general election, the Social Democrats have 2 seats now in Dublin Central. They won't keep both of them.
Right.
So one of the candidates is going to have to step aside, I'd imagine, so that they don't lose both seats at the general, because they split the vote there. There's not 2 Social Democrat seats in Dublin Central. The Greens had a good election also. They did it all right. They held their own. But bad for Sinn Féin, bad for Fianna Fáil, good for Fine Gael. Fine Gael winning in Galway West is probably going to patch over some of the underlying issues going on in the party as a whole. I think there's some issues there, structural issues there themselves that need addressing. But good for Fine Gael, good for Social Democrats. Social Democrats have increased their vote massively in both constituencies. Even Galway West taking 6,000 votes, that should seem good for a seat at the next election. So that's all we got, folks. That's our by-election madness over and done with, unless somebody else dies or gets promoted in the next few years.
Well, thank you so much, Tull. You really just did outstanding coverage on this, really helped highlight so many of the issues. And so many great predictions heading into it. So we've really enjoyed this. We are going to have an interesting week. We have a special guest coming up soon. There's some other news we may cover. So for our new listeners and our longtime listeners, we may be a little off schedule or rushing this one out for the by-election results, but we are going to be on your devices, on your computers quite a bit over the next week. So we hope to join us. I'm Vince Martin from Wall Street in Maine.
I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.